It's now time for the Billy C. Show, part of the BillyCBoxing.com network.
And we're coming to you live from the Billy C. Studios in Lake George, New York. I'm Bill Caligiero. It's time for the Billy C. Show. Good morning, good day, good evening, whenever you're watching, whenever you're listening. I hope you're doing okay. Today's show is being brought to us in part by Sal's Neighborhood Pizzeria and Italian Restaurant located on St. Simon's Island in Georgia. Check out the website, salsneighborhoodpizzeria.com. We'll give my man a call, 912-268-2328, 912-268-2328. And I was hoping to get Sal on this morning, but I didn't hear from him, and he's doing great, and we will have him back next week. I need to just solidify some stuff with Sal. We did speak this week, and we had every intention of having him on, but either his phone isn't working or whatever. So the return of Sal Rocky Senecola. Look for that next week. And it's a big week for sure. Well, the studio just lost power, and magically it just came back. Maybe somebody has to pay the bill. I don't know. But in any event, today's show is also being brought to us in part by my book, Tom Molyneux, From Bondage to Baddest Men on the Planet, is available right now where all good books are sold. You can get a copy of this book right now where you're watching or listening to this very show. Just visit barnesandnoble.com or amazon.com. Also, today's show is being brought to us in part by Ginico USA. And the reason why I say Ginico USA is because we have our 24-hour, 7-day-a-week show on GinicoUSA.com. So check it out. You can get it on all the major streaming services, so you're not going to want to miss that. And also, don't forget about our website, www.BillyCBoxing.com, where Sal and actually I should say Dax and the gang keep everything updated. So you're going to want to check that out. And speaking of checking out, I got to make sure we got everything working here. So far, so good. So we'll just bear with me here 1 second. Yeah, I had to double check to make sure our other systems were working correctly, and they seem to be. So let's get this party started. Alfredo Angulo. Now, coming up, we're going to break down the Errol Spence Jr. and Shawn Porter fight. We're going to talk a little about the upcoming Sergey Kovalev Canelo Alvarez fight. But I wanted to talk about the Alfredo Angulo fight that took place last night. Listen, Angulo won a split decision. One of the judges had it for Peter Kid Chocolate Quillin, 96-94, while the other two saw it for Angulo, 97-93, 96-94. My thoughts on this fight are simple. It was an evenly matched fight by two over-the-hill fighters. And when I say over-the-hill, I mean they were both pushing 40, and it was an entertaining fight for two guys like that. To suggest that either of these guys, and you would assume that Kid Chocolate was in his last fight of his career, I don't know that for certain, but I would hope so. And Angulo obviously is going to get a shot here against someone. And if it's a young fighter, he's not going to stand a chance. Listen, Angulo takes way too many punches. He always has. And he took a lot last night. The other thing I noticed about Angulo is that his mind was wanting to throw a punch, but his arms were literally a second behind. Extremely slow. Now, he was never a speed demon, but extremely slow last night. And the other thing I wanted to mention that I noticed was he was throwing his punches just like lightning. No, not fast, just not hitting the same spot twice. Very inaccurate with his punches last night. And Boom Boom Mancini made a great comment. He said the bottom line is that he wasn't cutting the ring off, and he certainly wasn't. He wasn't cutting the ring off at all. He chased him around, and it was an entertaining fight, and Angulo deserved to win because he did seem to land the harder shots. And speaking of harder shots, one thing I can't stand about the PBC, and that is they're rah-rah men. And, they were jumping. Oh, what a shot. Oh, he landed this. Oh, he landed. He wasn't landing crap. Occasionally he landed some shots. Quillin was rolling with a lot of the punches. Some of the other punches weren't landing flush. The crowd clearly was in Angulo's corner, and so were the judges. Listen, entertaining fight. But if it were me, I would be telling Angulo, hey, if you could find some other 37, 38-year-olds to fight against, so be it. But don't put him in there with another super middleweight, anyone of note, because the guy's going to get pummeled. And unfortunately, he takes a lot of punishment. And he's got a beautiful wife and a beautiful family. He's not going to be able to enjoy it in 10 years, I'll tell you that right now. I hate to be a doomsdayer, but Alfredo Angulo, to me, is already kind of suffering from pugilistic dementia. Listen, years ago, when you would meet a fighter, a former fighter, and he would start going through the motions, this and that, and the way he would kind of just shuffle and throw his punches, that's the way Angulo was throwing his punches in the ring last night. So, very disappointing to see because I think it's a black eye for the sport. Also on that card, Chris Colbert. This kid looks promising. I know he thinks he's a lot better than he is, but he improved to 13-0 with 5 knockouts when he knocked out Miguel Beltran Jr. What a devastating face first knockout, 2 minutes and 57 seconds. Of the very first round. Thomas Delorme picked up a 10-round decision. He improves to 25-3 with a draw. He beat the previously undefeated Terrell Williams, who drops to 18-1. It was a unanimous decision, 98-91 twice, 96-93, all in favor of Delorme. And also on that card, Jesus Ramos knocked out his opponent, Ricky Edwards, in the 2 minutes and 42nd of the third round. Ramos improves to 11-0 with 10 knockouts. Ricky Edwards drops to 12-4 with 3 knockouts. Typical, in my opinion, a typical PBC card. The problem with the PBC is that they're trying to be the UFC, hey, rank your PBC fighters. They've separated themselves from the rest of the sport. And, I think that's a problem. Canelo and Kovalev kicked off their press conference this week. And there's no catch weight. Canelo Alvarez and Sergey Kovalev were pretty respectful of each other. There was no trash talking other than, I'm going to beat you, you're going to beat me, I'm going to beat you, that kind of stuff. No, I'm going to beat you, you're going to beat me. It's more like, I'm going to beat you, no, I'm going to beat you, Canelo says, I'm grateful to the fans, as always. I'm motivated here. It's an honor for me to share the ring with a fighter like Kovalev, who I met in 2012. Now we're about to make history. I know it's going to be the most difficult fight of my professional career. I will give it the best in the ring And then on this day, we can all yell, Viva Mexico. Mexico, I'm sorry. I feel great about this fight. Kovalev's a great fighter. This is what motivates me, taking a risk. Canelo said that this fight represents a challenge to him that is great. He feels that his abilities will be a key to victory. Kovalev, on the other hand, says, I'm happy to be back in the ring. Thanks to God and thanks to Canelo for his team for making this opportunity to get this fight. I think it's a big test for me in my boxing career because this is one of the best fighters in the world right now. I'm happy and I'm excited. Thanks for the support. He said it's the biggest fight of his career. It's a huge fight, huge test, November 2nd. Canelo's a great fighter. I respect Canelo 100%. He's taking a risk. My name is the biggest name at light heavyweight. I'm not so sure about that. One other thing. First of all, we talked about it last week. The truth of the matter is simple. In this particular fight, it's a calculated risk fight for Canelo Alvarez. He's in with a guy that, for all intent purposes, is also a shell of himself, and I think that Canelo knows perfectly well that the kryptonite, so to speak, for there's the old music, the Windows music, as I continue to recover from the power outage just as we kicked off this show. If you're just tuning in late, that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. But the kryptonite for Sergey Kovalev is simple. It's body shots. And, what is the biggest strength of Canelo? It's his body attack. I think they took this fight because they knew that Kovalev can't withstand a body attack constantly. And I think my early prediction is Canelo by stoppage in this fight. So that's that. Speaking of Golden Boy, because obviously Golden Boy is the promoter of this event, will be broadcast on DAZN. Remember last week when we were talking about Ryan Garcia and how he was bad-mouthing Golden Boy and he's being mistreated, he's being taken advantage of, all the usual things that they say. During the time we did the show last week and right now, they patched things up. Apparently they extended his contract. Golden Boy has even made some outrageous statements saying that he's thinking that Garcia is going to make close to $700 million by the time this contract is done. It was considered one of the most lucrative deals in the history of boxing for a prospect. And let's that's a key word here, boys and girls. Make no mistake, Ryan Garcia is a prospect. This is a guy, a kid who has not proven himself yet. Does he show and possess the talent that I think will transcend into being a superstar in the sport? Yeah, I do. But you know what? It is what it is. You can look great against carefully chosen opposition, and then as soon as you're put in there with a tough test, the truth comes out. To give this kid this kind of money, I think was a bad move. I really do. I think he had to prove himself first. I think Golden Boy feels that they're in a desperate situation, specifically Oscar De La Hoya. And the desperation is Canelo's not happy. And he put all his eggs in the Canelo basket. Canelo is starting to, his head is swelling up bigger than Teddy Atlas's. And all of a sudden he's looking around the stable and he's saying, whoa, who do I have? I got nobody. I got Ryan Garcia. Let's sign him. Nonetheless, he will be the co-main event on the Canelo-Kovalev card. It'll be interesting to see who he's going to fight. As far as I know, it was not announced. However, Peter Petrov called him out last night after his win. So it'll be interesting to see. That's the kind of fight I'd want to see Garcia in. Should he get by and have no problem against a Petrov, then maybe Oscar's money is well spent. Right now, I think he's rolling the dice big time. Oscar De La Hoya, after the signing, said one of our defining features as a company is to develop champions and make them into stars. From the second we discovered Garcia, we knew he was different. We knew he was special. We knew he could move the needle. Besides his amazing talent, he brings an outside appeal that few fighters can. At the same time, he also needs the right environment to develop, and that environment is with us. Under our guidance, I have no doubt that this young charismatic fighter will become the biggest star in the sport. Garcia, he says actions speak louder than words. So does money. He says, I'm here today to show everybody I consider Golden Boy my family, and we're going to be in this together as I fulfill my dreams. Just like I have all the capabilities to become a big star, Golden Boy has all the tools to get me there, but I just want to tell everyone, enjoy the ride. We wasn't singing that tune last week, that's for sure. But in any event, some other stuff I wanted to mention real quick is we are going to be doing the show next week. I haven't figured out if we're going to be doing it immediately after the Errol Spence Jr. Shawn Porter fight. I'm leaning towards doing that. And to touch on that card real quickly, and I'm going to get Dax on here in a few minutes, but to touch on that card real quickly, it's a decent card. It is a pay-per-view, and it is a PBC card, which I'm a little surprised with. Usually they're one-sided. At least, we do get upsets with them. But Errol Spence Jr. Is going to be putting his title on the line against Shawn Porter, who will be putting his title on the line. We'll have a unification. The co-main event, Anthony Dirrell against David Benavidez. I like this fight. I do. Anthony Dirrell is actually the WBC super middleweight titleist, and David Benavidez is a young up-and-comer. I'll break those two fights down a little bit later. And then also on that card, two other fights that are part of the pay-per-view. Mario Barrios, who's been rising to the top steadily, is taking on Batur Akhmedov for a vacant WBA super lightweight, junior welterweight title. And Josito Lopez against John Molina Jr. That fight, if any, no title, but both of those fighters give it their all. We know that. There's no question about that. Dirrell, I'm not a big fan of Dirrell. 34 years old, won his title against Anvi Yildirim via a technical decision. When you look at his resume, in my opinion, who did he really beat? I mean, Badu Jack, he beat in 2015. He lost to in 2015. He had a draw against Saikyo Bika. The Dirrell brothers have really put, in my opinion, a dark cloud over the sport. Every time these guys fight, something unsportsmanlike takes place. And I hope that it isn't the case on next week when they fight. And Shawn Porter and Errol Spence, well, no disrespect to Errol Spence. Errol Spence Jr. is a quality fighter. There's no question about it. He's a young, up-and-coming fighter who's, in my opinion, going to, or I guess you got to say he's more than up-and-coming. He's a champion, but he hasn't fought anybody. He's all of a sudden, I'm going to break down his resume a little bit later, but all of a sudden, he's thinks he's fought them all. This is a different version of Errol Spence Jr. than we first met. He's taken on Shawn Porter. Now, Shawn Porter isn't a guy that is just oozing with boxing skill. There's no doubt about that. But he's a tough guy to beat. He's a champion now. He was a former champion before. He comes at you. He's there to fight. He has hit the canvas, I believe only once. He does cut up and cut you up with the way his style is. I like this fight. I think it's going to be a big test for Errol Spence Jr. I'm not so sure that he can get by it. I think Shawn Porter is the perfect kind of opponent to really let us see what kind of a fighter Errol Spence Jr. really is. When you look at Spence's resume, I mean, which I happen to have right here, his last fight was a Mikey Garcia fight. Went the distance with Mikey Garcia. Would have thought for sure he would have knocked out Garcia. Mikey Garcia, a future Hall of Famer, there's no question about it. I love Mikey Garcia. But remember, he came up 3 weight classes to fight this guy. He beat Lamont Peterson. I think his biggest, most impressive win was against Kell Brook when he won his title back in 2017. He fought Lamont Peterson, Carlos Ocampo, and Mikey Garcia since. Leading up to that fight, you could make the argument that his next biggest win was Chris Algieri, who was a shell of himself by the time he fought him. When you compare it to the resume of a Shawn Porter, Shawn Porter, come on. Ugas was a tough fight. Danny Garcia, Andre Berto, I'm not going to, Andre Berto was past his prime, but Keith Thurman, I thought he won that fight. Adrian Broner, he beats Kell Brook. You could make the argument that he won that fight. Devon Alexander when he was, relative. Malinaji. Shawn Porter has been in there with some proven commodities. Not so sure Errol Spence has, but I will break down those fights and give you my prediction a little bit later. Hey, listen, we're going to take a short break, and when I come back, we're going to have Dax Khan join us. We also have been experimenting with the, as I filled everyone in, we did a massive upgrade with our broadcasting software, so to speak, and one of the problems that we've been having is getting our cohorts, Dax and Alex Papali and Emily and Sal, on a camera shot. And there's been some changes within the vehicle that we use. So we're still experimenting. It may or may not work today, so bear with me. If not, you're just going to be looking at me all day.
Billy C will be right back.
Broken air conditioning, $4,400. Failing refrigerator, $2,500. Don't let outrageous repair and replacement bills like these bust your budget. Get the First American Home Warranty Plan. And when a covered appliance or system breaks, we'll repair it or replace it for you.
We had a high-end dishwasher go kaput. They put it in a brand new dishwasher.
We have plans that cover air conditioning, most appliances, plus heating, plumbing, electrical systems, and much more. Plans start as low as $25 a month. Why let a major appliance or system breakdown bust your budget or go through the hassle of finding trustworthy service people? Last year alone, we saved our customers over $120 million. Don't wait until something breaks and you're stuck with a huge bill.
You save a lot of money.
It's absolutely worth it.
If you don't have First American Warranty, get it.
Call 1-800-946-6234 for your free no-obligation quote.
Need relief from backaches and stiffness in your hips or down your legs? Then you need Dr. Ho's Back Relief Belt, the innovative technology to support and decompress your spine. And now it's covered by Medicare.
Every patient with back pain should be wearing this belt.
Nothing gave me instant relief except for the Dr. Ho belt.
Feel good while standing, walking, driving, doing housework, and while laying down. And now Dr. Ho's patented belt is available at our best price ever. It's even covered by Medicare. Order now and get the easy-to-use hand pump and back rehabilitation DVD free.
You know, similar belts can cost you almost $1,000, but my belts won't cost you $500, not $300, not even $200. I will give you my special TV price.
And remember, Dr. Ho's belt is covered by Medicare.
If you know a friend or family member that suffers with pain, get them my system today. Help them live with less pain, be more active, and get back to doing the things they love. Give them the gift of health.
Listen to this important message. If you owe money to the IRS, you will want to hear this.
Penalties and interest compound daily on your back taxes, putting you under a mountain of debt. Tax 10,000 has years of experience connecting people with tax resolution specialists. Working through the IRS Fresh Start program, they will handle all the necessary forms, and if you qualify, you may end up saving thousands of dollars. Call Tax 10,000 at 800-773-4604. Listen to.
Are you currently on Medicare? In other words, do you carry the red, white, and blue Medicare card? If so, are you suffering from chronic back pain? If you answered yes, you may be eligible for a pain-relieving back brace covered by Medicare at little to no cost, shipped directly to your home for free. These medical-grade back braces are ideal for lower back pain, arthritis, spinal disorders, and other chronic back problems. Will you qualify for a medical-grade back brace?
Call Back Brace 1-800-290-80.
Check out BillyCBoxing.com now, or feel the wrath of the mighty mustache.
Oh, that hurts! Why are you doing that to my face? I hate you!
That's BillyCBoxing.com. Consider this your warning. Now back to Billy C. Interact with the show at BillyCBoxing.com.
And we're back. You're watching and listening to the Billy C. Show. Don't forget to check out our 24-hour, 7-day-a-week boxing channel. A lot of good stuff on there. Not only do we put up previous shows, this show, we also put up a lot of our special events. So you can get on all the major streaming networks. So just visit GinicoUSA.com to sign up, GINIKOUSA.com. Joining us right now is my man Dax Khan. Good morning, Dax.
Morning, Billy C.
How you doing today, my man?
I'm doing good. I was just watching a little bit of Hopalong Cassidy.
Hop?
Yeah, I got these. I don't know what channel it is. They every weekend they play all the old westerns from the 40s, 50s, and 60s. I don't. I get a kick out of them.
Hey, that's even before my time. Angulo, Quinlan last night. What's your thoughts?
Well, I expected more and I expected less, if that makes any sense. I kind of expected Peter Quillin to shine for whatever reason, considering, Angulo's inactivity and he hasn't faced anybody above maybe C+ in a long time. But Angulo came out, and you stated, matter of fact, Marty Mulcahy was talking about last night on Twitter exactly how slow those punches were, and Quillin just couldn't avoid it. So I don't know. It was a good fight considering two guys that were never elite, despite the fact that Quillin was, is a former belt holder. And, they went out there. They're in their mid-30s. They really don't have any fights left in them. But, I was almost thinking that Quillin was going to go out there and do enough for them to make an excuse to give him a title shot against one of the belt holders that are signed under them. And, it would be more or less a showcase fight for that title holder. But, it just didn't work out that way. It was a good fight for the guys at that stage of their career and at that level. So, there's not much really more to say about it, Bill. I don't really know what to break down to it, Oh, absolutely. Angulo, after that, I forget how many months he was in that deportation camp when he had those immigration issues back in 2011 leading into 2012. He came out of there and he was never the same fighter. He went in there, one of the top names in his division, but when he came out of there, just something physically happened to him in that camp that really wore him out. If you remember seeing pictures of him while he was in that camp, they showed him. He just really looked like that camp took a lot out of him. I don't know, whether or not he was eating, whether or not it was, mentally. But after that, Alfredo Angulo was just not the same fighter. If you remember, when he fought Canelo Alvarez, Canelo more or less gave him that fight as a favor because they were friends, and he knew that, Angulo needed a big fight after that happened. So I'm not really sure, what really, where his career just totally, suddenly just, went flat.
Yeah, I was shocked to see both of them as old as they were, both pushing 40. One was 36, one was 37. So I don't know. And Angulo's style, he's a guy that's a warrior. He takes a lot of punches. I don't know, man. I know they're going to give him a shot against somebody, a younger fighter in the super middleweight division, and I'm a little
hopefully
nervous.
not. Hopefully not. Both those guys can still continue fighting and still make a decent living and still get some good wins on the undercards of the bigger fights against opponents that are suitable, more evenly matched for them. It doesn't mean their career's over. It just means it's over at that level.
Right. What about Chris Primetime Colbert? What were your thoughts on him?
I think Colbert is I like he's a slick boxer. He's still raw. He's learning. It was a shock last night that he got that KO like that and so quickly because he's not a puncher.
No, but he thinks he's awfully great. But he did.
He's young. He has to think that, Bill. Of course, he has to think that. But he hasn't really been in there with anybody tough either. So it's again, the biggest shock about that was the one punch knockout because he's not a puncher.
Yeah, well, I didn't really get a good gauge on what he can do. Aside from that one punch, he didn't do anything.
Yeah, there wasn't enough time, but I've seen him in the past. He's fast, he's slick, and, he's growing. You know what I mean? He just really hasn't been in there against anybody that's really been able to test him and put him in any adversity, so we know exactly how good he might be or might not be.
All right, so we talked about it last week. Let's talk about it now a little more. It's official. Canelo and Kovalev, they kicked off the press conference. They were both pretty respectful of each other. The fight's going to take place in Las Vegas on November 2nd. It sets up, assuming Canelo gets by this fight unscathed, it sets up him to be able to be back on his normal schedule, meaning he'll fight Cinco de Mayo in May and then again in September. The fight, to me, seems 100%, just like we talked last week, 100% calculated by Canelo and his team. He is going to be picking up another belt. It is an accomplishment. I'm not knocking him for it. But it's an extremely calculated fight, in my opinion. After letting it digest a little bit, in your opinion, does Kovalev have a shot to win this fight?
Of course he does. So many people are already, and it amazes me that I think 98%, maybe even 99% of the people I've spoken to about this so far, Bill, have Canelo winning. We know that Canelo is, he's a superb boxer. He works the body well, which is Kovalev's Achilles heel, so to speak. Kovalev, though, he's the much bigger man. He has a great jab. Yep, he looked a bit faded against Anthony Yard. Maybe if he had some better stamina, wouldn't have got knocked out. That fight may have been a different story, but Kovalev did get the win. Kovalev was outboxing Alvarez in that loss until he got caught with that punch. The first Ward fight, we know the story on that, how disputed that was. The second Ward fight, Kovalev just got bullied. People are just really writing Kovalev off so easily, and I don't understand it. Kovalev is a quality boxer, and more or less, he's not the best guy in the division, but he's the most accomplished in terms of the opponents that he's faced, at that top level and how many title fights he's been into compared to the other champions. So, but, Canelo, He certainly picked the weakest link at light heavyweight. We don't even need to go into that. We know he didn't pick Bivol, he didn't pick Beterbiev or Vodzik for a reason. His team didn't pick him for a reason. But Kovalev is no one-trick pony. I'm not going to write him off. Remember, Mikey Garcia and Errol Spence, a little bit over a month ago, Spence isn't 36 years old, but, when a good big man faces a good little man, it usually works out into favor of the good big man. And Canelo hasn't been a devastating puncher at middleweight, let alone light heavyweight. And Kovalev is, he's a big guy. He's not heavyweight big, but, he's a big guy. And you've seen that, especially when they were standing face to face. So, this isn't going to be as easy as people think it is. If it is, then that would be amazing. Now, what would be really impressive is, will Canelo go after one of the true beasts of that division that are in their prime?
That's some great points, Dax, because the size difference was so obvious. And I did say I do think that Canelo's going to win, because I think that his game plan will be attack the body, which has been proven with Kovalev. Now, and again, just like you pointed out, against legitimate light heavyweights, the body has proven to be his kryptonite, so to speak. So I'm thinking Canelo's game plan will be to attack that. However, just like you mentioned, Kovalev has boxing skill that a lot of people don't give him credit for. He can throw a beautiful jab. He does have movement when he wants to. And you're right. I think that his chance of winning this fight is to use his size and arm reach advantage and not so much make it the type of exciting fight that we all like to see, but a winnable fight for him. Do you think that he's got the discipline to do that for 12 rounds?
We talk about corners a lot in this sport, and how much of a difference does that corner make? Kovalev and John David Jackson had a great dynamic together when things were going well. The breakup, each one has their own version, more or less. It seems that, Kovalev blamed John David Jackson for the Ward fights, but Buddy McGirt is different. Buddy McGirt, he's more cerebral. Buddy McGirt, he looks into the fights a little bit differently. And Buddy McGirt, he seems to have, with his fighters, the ability to give them the right instructions to change fights when they're not going their way during the fight. So, I think that's going to be a big difference. Buddy McGirt there. I think Buddy McGirt is going, more or less has kind of stripped away the crusher image, and more or less is having Kovalev use those complete skills. So that is going to be a major factor here, that Buddy McGirt keeps him focused, keeps him straightforward, and as long as Kovalev's listening to Buddy McGirt, it's going to be a different fight.
Do you think that the fact that Canelo is kind of out of his schedule, so to speak, he'll be fighting a couple of months later than he normally does? He has been consistently fighting in May and September. His body has acclimated to that, and he's off a couple of months. And conversely, Kovalev just recently fought. Do you think that's going to benefit Kovalev, or will the extra time off benefit Canelo? I mean, or do you think it's going to be a non-factor?
Again, that was by design. Canelo could have fought in September, but he's going in against the bigger man. He has to put a little bulk on there and not come in there, in the weight that he walks around. You know what I'm saying? He has to, put on that bulk for fight night and do it properly. He can't just come in there in his daily street weight at 175 pounds, because that's not going to benefit him. So that gives him a little bit of a rest, and it also benefits them in the fact that they seen Kovalev go 12 rounds with Yard, who was, other than strong, he really didn't do much in that fight. And, more or less, we've seen how it attacks Kovalev physically. So it's all an advantage of Canelo there. It's both not only advantage for, the time off and the being able to adjust the body to get up to that 175 pounds, properly, but also the fact that Kovalev hasn't had enough time to, fully recover from the Yard fight. And when you're 36 years old, Bill, as a fighter, that at 36 years old, it's a whole lot harder to recover than the average 36-year-old.
This is true. More Golden Boy news. Last week we were also talking about how Ryan Garcia what this kid is expecting this, is expecting that. I mean, he's not even proven and blah, blah, blah. He was holding his breath and stomping his feet. You and I got to meet him in Vegas. He did seem a little cocky. And lo and behold, he signs one of the most outrageously high contracts for what is still, let's make no mistake, he's still a prospect. He's now happy and calling Oscar De La Hoya family, which wasn't the case a week ago. What's your thoughts on this big contract that was just signed?
Yeah, well, as I said last week, I can understand why Garcia was upset. And one, because he is a prospect, and that was a big card for him to be under, and a lot of exposure. And, he went through that training camp, and he was willing to fight whoever they put in front of him. Golden Boy knew that Sparrow had that warrant out. They should have had somebody either replaced or somebody readily available if Sparrow could have got picked up. But that's then. This is now. The fact that they made this contract for him, I don't know. Do they see something really special in him that everybody else doesn't? And that's no knock to Garcia. He's a good fighter, but, we haven't there's nothing out there to prove that, he's the next Canelo, so to speak. Does he warrant the co-feature on Canelo-Kovalev? No. Maybe this is just their way of saying, okay, you know what, we're going to give you this, and then now we're just going to start fresh, rebuild, put the past behind us? Or is this more or less a, because he wanted to fight Romero Duno, who's going to be the opponent on this card, and Golden Boy Promotions didn't feel he was ready to fight Romero Duno, and that's why the Romero Duno wasn't put into that position, and he fought somebody else. So was this kind of their way of saying, you know what, you wanted it, kid, now we're going to give it to you. You have nobody to blame but yourself if you're not able to win this fight. Don't come to us and complain. You wanted this, we're giving it to you. We made up for the fight that fell through. We gave you a lucrative contract. Now it's sink or swim time.
Is he
that
fighting?
Could be very well happening.
Is he fighting Duno? I didn't know that was signed, sealed, and delivered.
According, I don't think that not quite signed yet, but according to couple people from Golden Boy and people around there, and Garcia, a few people in Garcia's camp have all said Duno's going to be that opponent. So whether or not that is, but that's who that's the guy that's in the sights for whatever reason. I don't know. I don't know what his obsession is with Romero Duno.
The funny thing is they talked about Petrov being available and Garcia wouldn't take him. Petrov fought this past weekend and won and immediately called out Ryan Garcia. That's actually a fight I'd like to see. Petrov is an accomplished fighter, of course, but he's also aging. Do you see that fight happening?
That would be a good fight because, as you stated, not only is he an accomplished fighter, but he's beatable by, a younger guy like Garcia, and he's also able to give Garcia a little bit of adversity and those things that a young prospect like that needs to deal with. Even though he would most likely win that fight, but he needs to deal with a little bit of adversity, so he's able to get to that next level. You know what happens in this sport, Bill? We talk about it all the time. These young fighters, they get too many easy fights, and then when they get put into that title title opportunity. For example, Jojo Diaz and Gary Russell Jr. Now all of a sudden, wow, they've just jumped 3 levels. They're not prepared for it because they never were put in a position where they had to deal with anything that one of those champions were going to offer them.
Right. Sometimes you got to be careful what you ask for. Next week.
Yeah, it could be. It's intriguing.
Next week we got a really good fight. I think Errol Spence Jr. against Shawn Porter. It's a unification fight in the welterweight division. The co-main event. I know you feel the way I do about the Durrell brothers. Anthony Durrell against Benavidez, David Benavidez for Durrell's WBC title. Then there's 2 other fights that are both intriguing. It really shakes out to be a pretty decent card. Mario Barrios, who's been on the rise for a while, taking our Batur Akhmedov for a vacant title. And the fight I'm kind of looking forward to that I think is going to kick off the broadcast. No titles on the line, but we know there's going to be a lot of fireworks. Josito Lopez against John Molina. First and foremost, what do you think of the card itself?
I think it's a pretty good card.
Is it a pay-per-view?
Not a $75 pay-per-view.
Is that what they're charging?
Yeah, it's not a $75 pay-per-view. There's, I don't know why we won't even, indulge into that, but I don't know why the sport thinks that every fight has to be a $75 pay-per-view. It's okay to have a $50 pay-per-view, and then if that does well, then, But that's the sport, and that's why I love the Zone and ESPN Plus. But for the most part, if it was a $50 pay-per-view, it would definitely be worth it. It's a quality card. The Molina fight, the Molina and Josecito Lopez fight. If all else fails, we know that one's going to deliver. The rest of them are pretty well matched up. The Anthony Durrell, David Benavidez fight. Remember, that was supposed to happen in 2017 when Badu Jack moved to light heavyweight and vacated that belt. But for whatever reason, it didn't. Benavidez faced Ronald Gavril and won that questionable decision. They had that rematch. Benavidez, he lost that title due to cocaine use. Durrell's out there, he's fighting Abihan, Anvil Yildirim, decent guys, but not great guys. Durrell's a two-time champion, but, I don't really know. But, he's, like you said, like him and Quitdre, it's always some sort of drama. Yes, I said Quitdre because anytime it gets tough, Andre Durrell quits. It doesn't matter if he has to say he was punched. It doesn't matter if his uncle just gets into the ring and hits somebody. It doesn't matter if, they have to prank phone call the guys in the ring corners from the other side. I just really don't like the Durrell brothers. They're just annoying.
Well, they're bad for the sport because there's always some negativity surrounding them. As we talk about these two fights, Anthony Durrell against Benavidez, let's look at that one in detail. Durrell is, the computer ranks him at number 13. He's 34 years old, and I agree with you 100%. He hasn't really fought anyone. Abihan, no disrespect, isn't what I would call a top-notch opponent. The Anvil Yildirim fight that he won the title with via a technical decision, that was kind of a gift to him. He was running out of gas in that fight. I mean, the Badu Jack fight in 2015, I think that he lost that fight, and he got the decision in there. He fought Seiki Obika twice. Is he a legit champion? And should he be a favorite in this fight?
I don't think. No, he lost to Badu Jack. He didn't beat Badu Jack. He doesn't. No, I don't think he should be the favorite. In terms of experience, maybe. David Benavidez, he's not really that rounded. He's a pressure fighter. He throws a lot of punches, but we've seen a lot of holes in his game. We've seen that in his fight with with Ronald Gavril. I'm sorry. We've seen that in his fights with Ronald Gavril, but also he's a physical fighter, and Anthony Durrell nor Andre, do they like physical fights? Remember the Saki Albika fights? You talk about how Anthony Durrell was out of breath and looked like he was fading really quickly in the Yildirim fight. In the Bika fight, my gosh, also Bika's an ugly fighter anyway, in terms of style, but he was so happy just to get those fights over. He was holding on. There was times he had that quit look in his eyes. He was looking over into his corner. So if the younger Benavidez can pressure him and wear him down, I see, Durrell folding, much like his brother does. I just see him folding.
Well, they're very similar in height, and Benavidez has a reach advantage, but I think the 12-year age advantage for David Benavidez is going to come into play here. I also believe that, he destroyed J. Leon Love in his last fight. That was the first fight after the cocaine suspension. I think he came out and was wanted to show something. He wanted to prove something. I think we're going to see the title change hands next week. I think Benavidez. I'm picking Benavidez in this fight. I think the Durrell brothers have been overrated since day one. So I'm officially picking David Benavidez. Who do you like in the fight?
I think Benavidez is going to win this. The Durrell brothers, they're not over, in physical skill set, Bill, in terms of what they're able to do, they're not overrated. It's just, for some reason, mentally, when the times get tough, they unravel. They fall apart. We've seen it time and again. Benavidez, despite the fact that, he is a former belt holder of the same title, he's really not a seasoned fighter. He's got 21 fights, 18 stoppages, but he's not a seasoned fighter yet. We haven't seen the best of David Benavidez. And that was the frustrating part about, the cocaine use. It's like, kid, you're a hot prospect in the sport. You're rising. You won a title. You at the time, I believe he was the youngest title holder in boxing. And what do? You go out there and you party it away. So David Benavidez, win, lose, or draw, needs to stick on the straight and narrow. Or David Benavidez, his career is going to be a flash in the pan.
Let's just hope that he learned his lesson. The main event next week.
Remember, that's the hottest division in boxing. Ray Boom Boom Mancini said so 17 times last night.
Yeah, well, the problem with the PBC, aside from, let me rephrase that. One of the main problems with the PBC is the fact that they're clearly trying to copy the success of Dana White and the UFC. They have successfully separated themselves from the rest of the sport. And there was a graphic during the broadcast last night where they were asking the audience to pick your favorite PBC fighter, and it was all PBC fighters. The smartest
thing... It wouldn't be your favorite PBC fighter if it was top-ranked fighters.
No, but my point is that they should be not trying to separate themselves. In other words, these other promoters, a fighter aligns themselves with a promoter. A promoter has a stable of fighters, et cetera, et cetera. That's been the way the sport has been for forever. But at some point, you gotta go to the other side and fight. I think Andy Ruiz was one of the only early fights that PBC in recent year, at least during this year, that crossed over, and I think they were just looking for a payday for him. Now all of a sudden they have a heavyweight champion aside from Deontay that could possibly come back if he beats AJ, come back and have a full PBC heavyweight title. But I don't know. I just think that they need to play with other promoters in order to continue with the uprise. Some of their fighters are just over-coddled, but.
Well, we've known that for years, that PBC more or less is trying to make this league. PBC, for lack of a better comparison, is kind of trying to make themselves like the World Boxing Super Series, not in that tournament style, but, have a brand name of their own. But, it's just really not working. I look at PBC more or less as you would look at the old Tuesday night fights or, the old Friday night fights or something like that. I look at it as, just a series of fights on TV. I really don't look at the PBC more or less as like, this one outlet, even though they're all signed with Heyman and so on and so forth. I don't look at it that way. I just look at it as a series that's on TV. I don't consider them like their own entity.
Interesting thing before we talk about the Porter-Spence fight. I know a guy that has started watching boxing again. He was a big fan at one time, and he watches it. He doesn't subscribe to any of the services or even the premium cable networks, but he does watch the PBC because it's broadcast on Fox generally. And I asked him, because he always talks to me, what'd you think of the fights last night? Whenever they have him on Fox, and we talk about him, and he's very opinionated and he's knowledgeable about the sport. I said to him, leading into this week, I said, there's another fight on the Fox network, PBC, so I'll be watching. I said, let me ask you something. They're having a big fight next week. It's Porter against Spence. It's a pay-per-view. Will you buy it? And he looked at me and said, well, he used a word I don't want to say on the air, but he basically said, no way. He says, I'm not going to spend any extra money. My point is this. The whole model and blueprint for PBC was to try to increase the fan base on free television for events just like Shawn Porter against Errol Spence. Their assumption that they were going to develop a fan base, develop following for their fighters, and ultimately cash out or cash in on a pay-per-view. Do you think, even though that this is a competitive fight, even though a lot of people think Errol Spence is the top welterweight, do you think it's going to do well with numbers?
They're going to do okay. They have niche fans. If you know what I mean? They have these niche fans that no matter who the PBC puts their top names in against, the fans buy into it very much how the announce team cheerleads, except, the fans don't really seem to know any better. And they target, and we've had this conversation several times over the years, Bill, they target a certain fan base of a certain age because they know that these fans of a certain age haven't really seen the sport as a whole. And this started before we had the ESPN Plus and the DAZN app where you're seeing fights from around the world. PBC was a great concept. It just had a horrible game plan. I would say like the Super Six. The Super Six was a great concept. It was a great tournament by the time it was over, but it was carried out horribly. But now, you have the World Boxing Super Series, which is more or less doing the same type of thing, but, they have a better plan set in place. So, the next people that come along, they kind of follow that PBC layout, blueprint, however you want to put it. At least now they know what not to do. And we'll maybe, one day we'll get more free fights on TV. Whether or not it helps the fighters, I don't know. I have no problems with the mega fights being pay-per-view. But, make sure that these guys that are the mega pay-per-view that are the actual international stars, even though Errol Spence Jr. and Shawn Porter are very popular here, and yes, they're known, with diehard boxing fans around the world, they're not like the mega stars. They're not a Mike Tyson type, they're not a Manny Pacquiao, they're not a Canelo type star.
Shawn Porter, Errol Spence, next week, who do you like and why?
Errol Spence, is definitely the more skilled fighter. This is highly anticipated as it should be. It's a unification bout. That's always a great thing in boxing. Spence, he's faced a smaller but elite Mikey Garcia. Kell Brook and Phil Greco, they have that fight, those two fighters in common. Brook beat Porter. Spence, we know, went out there and knocked out Brook home. Lamont Peterson, Errol Spence faced, a small fighter, but a very good fighter. He's a former world champion. And, Chris Algieri, a belt holder who was a decent fighter, not an elite fighter. Porter, you mentioned it before, he's been in there with better guys, more rounded guys, be it Devin Alexander, Paul Malignaggi, Kell Brook, Adrian Broner, Keith Thurman, Danny Garcia, most recently Yorganis Ugas. Why is that important? Because despite losing to Thurman and Brook, Porter has been in there with a variety of styles at the top level. Even the fights that Porter lost, Porter's never been, dominated. And his style, which is sometimes swarming, and his accuracy is abandoned, it really puts guys off their game plan. Errol Spence has never been in there with a guy that's so physical and strong. Even though Errol Spence is physically bigger, Shawn Porter is physically a strong fighter, and he has amazing stamina. Realize Shawn Porter can throw those punches for 12 rounds and never take a step back. And what might be being overlooked is Shawn Porter is a very good boxer. People forget how good Shawn Porter was as an amateur. A lot of people, well, that was the amateurs. This is the professionals. The point of the matter is Shawn Porter has that ability there for when he needs it and when he wants to, and we've seen it on occasion. In fact, Shawn Porter has a win over one of the best guys in boxing as an amateur, Alexander Usyk, who's also a gold medalist. Why is that important? Because, again, it stresses that Shawn Porter doesn't need to only stand there and try and pressure Spence and be a swarmer. Shawn Porter has a closet full of things that he can use at his disposal. Does Errol Spence have all those things? Can Errol Spence stand there in a Shawn Porter-type fight, go to war? How will Errol Spence act if one of those headbutts or clashes happen and Shawn Porter opens him up and Shawn Porter keeps coming at him? Those are the questions, and that's what makes this really intriguing. You want to say Errol Spence, but on the other hand, you don't want to count Shawn Porter out. I'm leaning towards Spence, but, I would not be surprised if Shawn Porter went out there and made Spence uncomfortable, made it a rough fight, put Spence out of his comfort level, and brought out the decision.
2 points I want to make. One, Shawn Porter in his last fight against you guys, remember, he tried to box. He got away from everything you just said, which was a positive for him. The constant pressure, the coming at you, the throwing punches that are in all angles, basically recklessness. Got away from it, tried to prove to people that he could box, and he made a fight too close. The big question for Porter is, will he do that again, or will he go revert back to what got him all those big wins? The other issue is, they both fought Kell Brook. Kell Brook beat Porter in a very close fight. But when Kell Brook fought Errol Spence, if I recall correctly, that was after Triple G busted his face up. That was the second broken orbital bone that Kell Brook received in a fight. Triple G had to put some mileage on Kell Brook. So was it the same Kell Brook that fought Errol Spence, 3 years after Shawn did?
That's a valid point, valid question. I don't want to take anything take anything away from that win, considering he went over to the UK. It was a closer fight than people think. I think more or less prior to the stoppage, the two knockdowns is what separated them on the scorecards. And Kell Brook, again, like you stated, he went up to Triple G, and he was just coming down in weight, which of course taxes the body. So, you don't really know. He's been in there with some really good guys since then. Not guys of Shawn Porter's strength or even Shawn Porter's boxing ability. Mikey Garcia, of course, is a better boxer than Shawn Porter, but that size difference, as I was stating with the Canelo and Kovalev fight, how that's going to play out, that was the major factor. Mikey Garcia was just not big enough or strong enough to keep Errol Spence off of him, and that's why Errol Spence was able to just do what he wants with him. And before anybody wants to say, oh, well, are you saying that Errol Spence was cherry picking? No. Mikey Garcia called that fight out, so, Errol Spence just obliged him. The point of the matter is that, it's just a total different ball game. Shawn Porter is very strong, and my only thoughts on this, Bill, is how will Errol Spence react when Shawn Porter becomes that guy that just goes right at him? We've seen how Keith Thurman reacted. He just shelled up onto the ropes.
Yeah,
will Errol Spence do that?
Keith Thurman, surprisingly enough, is injured again. And he's out for another year. So, Dax, appreciate your thoughts, and we'll look forward to you late next weekend after the fight. We'll do it as soon as the fight is over. So we'll be looking forward to that. And by the way, keep up the good work on the website. It's a pleasure for me to get on our website and see that at least somebody's keeping up with the stuff.
All right, everybody, enjoy your Sunday.
Take it easy, brother. That's Dax Khan. You can check him out up on BillyCBoxing.com. I got to take a short break. When we come back, I'm scheduled to have Alex Papali. Don't go nowheres.
Billy C will be right back.
Have osteoarthritis in one or both knees? If you have osteoarthritis in one or both knees, are you on Medicare, Obamacare, or other health insurance? If you answered yes, you may be eligible for a prescription strength solution for osteoarthritis of the knees, covered by Medicare at little to absolutely no cost to you. We also offer a prescription strength topical pain relief ointment that can be used for pain experienced on other areas of your body. Our experienced staff will work with your doctor and handle all of your Medicare or insurance paperwork. Best of all, your prescription is shipped directly to your home for free. Will you qualify for a prescription strength solution for osteoarthritis of the knee or for a topical pain relief ointment covered by Medicare or private insurance at little or no cost to you?
Find out for free by calling the Back and Knee Pain Center at 1-800-604-1072. That's 1-800-604-1072, 1-800-604-1072.
Medical alarms for people who fall or have medical emergencies. You never think you'll need one until you do. Hi, I'm Lonnie Anderson for Advantage Alert. Today, our advanced systems locate and protect people inside and outside their homes, plus when they're on the road, allowing users with the press of a button to speak with an operator who can summon help. And even after 30 years, Advantage Alert's products remain amazingly affordable.
Call 800-985-1705.
Addiction is an epidemic in America. If you or someone you love is struggling with addiction, you need to call the R360 Network now.
I'm Ken Seeley, author, addiction recovery specialist, and former addict. R360 is a nationwide network of addiction recovery specialists that I personally selected and recommend.
The call is free, the consultation is free. If you have private insurance, your treatment could be covered with no out-of-pocket cost.
Call 800-705-0023.
Are you home for free? These medical-grade back braces are ideal for lower back pain, arthritis, spinal disorders, and other chronic back problems. Will you qualify for a medical-grade back brace?
Call Back Brace America at 1-800-290-8300.
is boxing's only trademarked fantasy game. Check it out, www.kofantasyboxing.com. Select your own gym, your own fighters, track them through a season that can last from 3 months to a year, depending upon which league you join. You got to check this out, man. www.kofantasyboxing.com. Join it today. Again, www.kofantasyboxing.com, and tell them Billy C sent ya.
The one, the only, Don King.
Makes me feel good, Billy, to have you, the number 1 show in the country, talking boxing with Billy. So I invite each and every American that's listening to this great show to tune in, because we want you to be there with Billy and me.
Now back to Talking Boxing with Billy C., the only radio host man enough to take a punch from Mike Tyson.
Wait a minute, man. Hold on there. Jeremy, man, I need you to take this one, all right?
Wait, what? No way. I can't do this.
Need I remind you I'm Billy C., damn it? Now put on that mustache and get in there.
Hey, look at me. I'm Billy C. Crap.
The undisputed heavyweight champion of Boxing Talk Radio. It's Talking Boxing with Billy C. Now back to Billy C. Interact with the show at BillyCBoxing.com.
And we're back. You're watching and listening to the Billy C. Show. Glad you could be with us today. Don't forget, check out our 24-hour, 7-day-a-week, non-stop Billy C. television channel. That's right, Billy C. Boxing. We show all of our events, well, our past events, and we replay the show. It's 24/7. Check it out. It's quite the lineup. You can get all the information at JinnicoUSA.com and watch us on all the major streaming platforms. Joining us right now is my man. Unfortunately, I'm getting all the lawsuits from his unionized staff, but we are diligently working on getting a camera shot for all the contributors to this show. But Alex Papali joins us. Good morning, Alex.
Yeah, I'm going to send my makeup people to your house.
They obviously have been doing. Wait a minute. What are you saying? You know? Yeah. Well, I know they're doing a good job on you, but why do you want to send them to my house? You think I need an improvement? Is that what you're trying to say? Nice. Hey, that was kind of subtle, but it wasn't. You know what I mean? But anyway, maybe you should.
I meant with like torches and pitchforks.
Yeah. Those. I get those every night. You know. Come on. But anyway. Alfredo Angulo, Peter Quillin, fought last night, and at times I was sad for both of them. It was a good matchup, and I don't mind seeing matchups like this, Alex, when you have two fighters that are similar in age and deterioration aspect, and they fight each other, and it makes it a very interesting fight. Like last night, it was a very exciting fight to watch, and I enjoyed it. But I couldn't help but think beyond the fight. And now Angulo, unfortunately for him, he won the fight. So I can't help but anticipate that he's going to be going in there with someone at least 10 years younger with him next time. And he just seems, it seems like his mind is reacting, but his fists are not.
Yeah, I mean, it really, I was a little annoyed that I was staying up so late for what I thought was going to be like a 2 or 3 round blowout. And then it turned into, I was thrilled because it turned into a really good fight. But you're right, it was sort of a sad fight because I couldn't help but wonder about what the gray matter of Alfredo Angulo was going to be like afterwards. But that's the way he's always fought. It was a battle between two shot-looking guys, and it was amazing that Quillin looked as shot as he did. If that was Caleb Truax, I think he would have been in trouble. But I think that that's one of the things is that it's very possible he figured he was going to have an easy fight, so he wasn't in the shape that he probably should have been. But it turned out to be kind of like a fun, it was almost like a super middleweight version of Tex Cobb versus Ernie Shavers. It was a fun slugfest. Sloppy, dramatic, dangerous. I really enjoyed it. On paper, it looked like a mismatch, and it turned out it wasn't. But I tell you, language barrier aside, Alfredo Angulo did not sound too good in that interview afterwards.
The point is this. He has taken so many shots throughout his career. And like, they were talking about during the broadcast, I mean, he was never known as a defensive fighter. I mean, he'll take 7 shots to try to land one. And, that's never going to change. I don't care who's training him. The problem is that when he's ready to launch that one, he's thinking it's time, and then his body is reacting, it seemed to me, a full second behind. And he was like lightning. And I don't mean speed. I mean the fact that he couldn't land this on the same spot twice. His accuracy his accuracy was terrible. He showed some signs of a young fighter not knowing how to cut the ring off. It was sad. He reminded me the way his fists were going and the way his footwork was when you talk to an old fighter, and I don't mean someone my age. I mean a guy, in his 70s or 80s that used to fight, and he'll get down like when I used to talk with Carmen Basilio. God rest his soul. When he was in his 80s, and he's and he starts throwing punches and doing what he does. And you could just see that at one time he really, had the tools, but, age, deteriorated them. Well, that's what I saw in Angulo last night. I saw a guy that just was going through the motions, was physically slow, was aged, and he's not going to be able to have a conversation with his gorgeous wife in about 10 years because he's in trouble, in my opinion, Alex.
I definitely worry along those same lines. But that's the nature of our sport, is that it's long-term damage occurs from being hit in the head. And that is why you got to know when to say when. But I don't know. I mean, in a way, like you were saying, and you and Dax alluded to, in a way, the worst thing that could happen to Alfredo Angulo is that he'd win, because it would encourage him to keep going. That did happen. I did think I did not score it round by round at that point of the night, because like I said, I was all ready for a blowout. I did think that it was possible. Quillin won only because he did land a lot more clean punches, but I think that overall he was in a retreat most of the night. So I had no problem with the closeness of the decision and that it broke Angulo's way, and I definitely felt happy for him. What the line of the night was when Peter Quillin said, "I'm glad my wife has a job." That was the best.
Yeah, well, she's got a good job. She's like some kind of designer or something. But, I don't know. I just remember Angulo's wife was the one that encouraged him to get back in the ring. So I don't know. When not to spend too much time in this because there's so many other things I want to talk to you about, but when does the promoter or the trainer take a fighter like Angulo and say, hey, maybe it's time to hang him up? I mean, let's watch the tape. Should he watch the tape and see what I saw? Does he see it as just another day at the office, or does he see what I see coming? I mean, aren't the people around the fighter supposed to be the ones that protect them from themselves? No fighter is going to be the one that says, I'm finished. Generally, somebody around him has to.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's one of the things that I think if you're somebody who loves this sport, and especially if you go to Canastota, go to the induction weekend, if you've gone once, if you've gone multiple times, you see the long-term effects of this sport. Now, this is not the only dangerous profession. I would assume if you go to coal miners' reunions, it's not the happiest place because you see the long-term effects of working in a coal mine. So I think with the families of a fighter, there's some of this that is expected because of what they're doing and the dangers of what they're doing. But you're right. At some point, you have to take a hard look at what's happening and maybe compare an interview from when your career started to the interviews after the fight last night. And how do you sound? What do you think? But that's just it. Is that being honest is a tough thing, Billy C. Denial is a lot like a dream.
Wait a minute. Denial, isn't that a river in Egypt?
It is, and it's also one of those things, you don't know you're in denial. It's like a dream. You don't know you're in it until you're out of it. So,
I remember years ago I was talking about the medical and what we should do in boxing, and I was poo-pooed because of the cost, but this is where it would come into play, where it could save a fighter's future. If they would take the head scan of a fighter as he turned pro, when he turned pro, and kept it in the record books, they could go back and review it after a fight like this and show a fighter on the wall, hey, look, this was your brain scan 10 years ago, and this is it after the fight last night. Look at the deterioration. Look at this section of the brain. Look at this. Look at the swelling. Or they could see that there's no difference, and just say, hey, keep going. This is where the mentality of a fighter is indestructible. And, that's when a fighter is surrounding themselves, you would assume, with people that have promised them that they're going to take care of them and lead them in the right direction. Well, this is the time when they need to. It's easy to lead a fighter to the good fights and sign the right people around them, et cetera, in the beginning. But this is what separates the people that truly care about a fighter versus the people that are just trying to make a buck. And, they could justify it all they want by saying, hey, he's making more than I am. I'm only getting a 10% cut or whatever the cut is. But at the end of the day, I think we're going to be – I hate to, be a naysayer, but I think we're going to be hearing really negative things about Alfredo Angulo in a decade from now. But in any event, good luck to him, and we'll see what happens. But they made it official. Canelo-Kovalev kicked off their press conference. The fight is taking place in Las Vegas November 2nd. Has anything changed with your thoughts on this fight, Alex, between last week when it was very well rumored and almost signed, sealed, and delivered to this week where, it's all of a sudden, it's not that far away. It's a little over a month away, a month and 2 weeks, let's say. How do you see it going from now until then? Does Kovalev have a chance? Dax made some great points earlier today. Most people are already handing the W to Canelo. Is it going to be competitive? What's your thoughts?
I think it will be competitive, and I think it will be fun while it lasts. But I do think Canelo beats him, and I do think that Canelo. I think the biggest advantages Kovalev has relate to size, and I think that Canelo is the kind of guy. I think I said last week that if they were chess players, Kovalev is like a regional collegiate champion, decent, very quality guy. But Canelo's like a Bobby Fischer. He's a grandmaster. So I really think that he's shown that he can do everything. And I think that's one of the things that Golden Boy has also shown with him is they're masters at matchmaking. They knew exactly how to hit the brakes with Golovkin and then take those fights and now make him wait. Those are all things that have only made Canelo better. I think that they see that Canelo of the light heavyweight champs, Canelo's the one that you can get the belt from. It will be fun while it lasts, because Canelo has a great jab. So I do think that, Kovalev has great jab, great straight punches. When he was at his best, that was one of the things that was great about him, was he was like this stalking boxer puncher with really dangerous 1-2. So I do think that could put some pressure on Canelo, but I think Canelo will make adjustments and figure it out and probably stop him. And I think, like we've said, body shot. And but I think that it's going to be a fun fight. And I like that the Ryan Garcia thing is fascinating. It's amazing how.
Wait a second. I got a question. That's the next thing up, but hold on. I asked Dax an interesting, if I do say so myself, it was an interesting question, and you just kind of brought it back into focus. Is Kovalev disciplined enough to utilize the jab? Because let's face it, if he can do it for 12 rounds and move and jab and just be disciplined enough, because let's face it, lack of discipline is what's been the weakness for Kovalev. Should he, be disciplined under the guidance of a Buddy McGirt? Does he win a boring fight? Because let's face it, if he uses his height and reach advantage and movement, Canelo will never be able to launch a body attack. The question is Kovalev disciplined enough to do it?
Right, and I think he is, and I think he knows how important this fight. He can't lose this fight. So I think, and he can't get stopped. So I think he's going to come in great shape. And you're right. I think that having Buddy McGirt in your corner is definitely a plus. Because if there's anybody who can prepare you for the nuances that you're going to see in terms of psychology from a guy like Canelo, I think it's a guy like Buddy McGirt, who's been in there with one of the best fighters of the last couple of generations in Pernell Whitaker. So I think that Buddy McGirt, if he can get, that's the thing we've seen about, like you and Dax were talking about with John David Jackson at that time. Kovalev listened to him. They worked great together. Kovalev is not so much a guy that, it was an attitude or something. I think a lot of it's the psychology for him. He was a guy who did well when he was winning, as with that sort of aggressive, I hate to use the word bully, but bully as a fighter. Once a bully is beaten, and the way he was beaten, they are a little like Humpty Dumpty. It's hard to put themselves back together again. And now he has shown that he does, has gotten himself together to get back on the winning ways. The fact that he avenged himself against Alvarez was something I didn't think he was going to do. But against this Alvarez, I think he's going to have a lot of problems.
Now, it's time for the Ryan Garcia. Last week, Golden Boy, he's cheating me. He's this, he's that. This week, he's family. I love him. He's my man. I think the contract is ridiculous. I think that Garcia talked his way and social media'd his way into becoming a very rich kid. I don't think that he has proven anything beyond any kind of reasonable doubt that he deserved whatever it was. They're talking it's going to end up being a $700 million deal over the course of over the length of the contract. This is a guy who has not fought a top contender yet. Do I think he's got the potential? Of course I do. I think he's extremely talented, but he's a little over cocky. What's your thoughts on the whole picture?
Well, I do think that in terms of for the kiddies out there, the model it sets is kick and scream and throw a tantrum and embarrass people on social media, and then you'll get everything you want.
That's what, but we know that this whole generation, that's what they do. I mean, You know, and then on a negative point, you know, you talk mean to somebody and it drives them to suicide. You know, so it's become very disheartening to see the whole social media go in the opposite directions than, in my opinion, the intentions were to begin with. But
it's, you know, it's strange, and I do, you know me about what my thoughts on family. I'm not surprised by anything. So that idea that a family could be that volatile and that at each other's throats 1 minute, and now I love you and I'm going to make sure that you have the best deal ever.
Hey, don't forget, Alex, there's always a family secret.
That's right. That's right. That's right. And I tell you, that's the thing about it, is that families fight hard and families love hard. So if that's the case, hey, God bless them. You're right. I think they see something that we haven't seen yet, because I'm not sure Garcia's worth that. But let's find out. I'll take the plunge. You know, I hope we're going to see some good matchups, because that's an awful lot of money. So I hope we don't see a bunch of cupcakes that he fights, but we'll see. I mean, the Romero-Duno fight, that sounds really good.
Next week we got a pay-per-view. We'll be doing the show, Drink Your Coffee. We'll be doing it right after the official announcement is made. Errol Spence Jr. taking on Shawn Porter. There are some other good fights on that card as well. I'm not so sure it's worth a pay-per-view, but as far as Errol Spence Jr. Going up against Shawn Porter, what's your thoughts on that fight?
I'm going to be coming back from the movie theater, so I'm going to be lit up. Looking forward to it. I think it's going to be a really good fight. I think Errol Spence beats him. I like it by decision. But I think, like Dax and you were saying, I think Shawn Porter definitely has the capabilities to show him some wrinkles he's never seen if he boxes. If he does not box, if he fights the way he usually fights, like the grinder that he is, if he boxes, it's the same mistake like a Hagler made against Roberto Duran. Why do something that you're not skilled at or not as skilled at when you're facing a guy who's really good at that? Do what is in your nature, and his nature is to be in your chest. Pressure, a grinding type of fight. That, I think, is something Spence has not dealt with before. I think Porter would be really wise to bring that fight to him, and I think that's what fans will want to see too. And I think we're going to get some of that.
You go back with Errol Spence, 2015, Chris Herndon, Alejandro Barrera, Chris Algieri, Leonard Bundu, Kell Brook, put an asterisk next to it, but Lamont Peterson, Carlos Ocampo, and most recently against Mikey Garcia. None of them went after Errol Spence with zero respect. They all went in there, oh, this guy's good, he's great, he's this, he's that, and they let Errol Spence do what he does best, pick him apart. Mikey Garcia went to prove a point, and Errol Spence couldn't take him out of there, which surprised me. The Kell Brook fight, this was Kell Brook after Triple G demolished him, you know, so this was a different Kell Brook than who fought Shawn Porter. I totally agree. If Shawn Porter goes in there like Shawn Porter, not the version of Shawn Porter we saw in his last fight that he basically, was trying to show everyone he can box. If he goes in and shows zero respect at all for Errol Spence is going to be tested like he never was before, and we'll see how good Errol Spence is against Shawn Porter. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I think that's what will make it an entertaining fight too, because that's what we want to know about Errol Spence is, he's shown himself to look really great, but we haven't seen him in a scrap. I hope this is a scrap.
Yeah, I agree, and that's what I want to see him in, a scrap. A fight, two young guys fighting like they fought last night. You know, like Angulo and Peter Quillin could have been the style of fight, or could be, you know, like a preview of the style of fight that I think has to take place for Shawn Porter to have a chance. And, you know, let's see if Errol Spence wilts the way Quillin did. And the thing is you're not dealing with 37-year-olds. You're dealing with, you know, guys. There's only a 2-year difference in age, too, by the way.
Wow.
You know, people think that Shawn Porter is so much older. He's not. He's 2 years older, you know, so. And
well, that's one of the things that I'm very excited about, the Josecito Lopez versus John Molina
Well,
fight.
that's going to save the event because, you know, there's three things for sure. Death, taxes, and Josecito Lopez and John Molina are in exciting fights.
Absolutely. And that's the thing. I remember one of my favorite quotes about this sport. You know me, because I'm a horror movie guy. And that's the thing about this sport is that, sure, it's an athletic competition. But like we saw last night, at some point, sometimes a fight breaks out. And then it becomes something much more dire, much more urgent, much more important, dangerous. And as John Molina, I remember, said when he was preparing for the Provodnikov fight, he said, "This is not for the squeamish." And I love that quote. And it's so true. And even if you don't like blood, we had nice bloody cuts 2 Saturday nights in a row. That Williams, I mean, the cut that
Delorme fight.
Delorme got was a pretty bloody one. And then you had last week's Tyson Fury's horrible gash. It's Saturday night. Must be time for another bloodbath.
Well, enjoy it at the theater, and hopefully you won't get caught in too much traffic.
No, yep, it's only about 5 minutes away, so I should be good.
There you go. Alex, thanks. We look forward to you next week, brother.
All right, Billy C. Take care.
That's Alex Papali, and don't forget, you can catch us all next week. Hey, listen, I'm going to take a short break. When I come back, we'll talk some more boxing.
Billy C. will be right back. Part of the Billy C. Boxing Network.
Snacking has never been this exciting. At Graze.com, we combine wholesome ingredients with the flavors we all love to create over 100 exciting snacks. Like these. We'd love to send you a Graze sampler box for free. Just go to Graze.com, enter the code ENJOY36, and we'll mail your free box to your home or office. Join thousands of Grazers already in love with our exciting snacks. So come to Graze.com for your first box free.
Need relief from backaches and stiffness in your hips or down your legs? Then you need Dr. Ho's Back Relief Belt. The innovative technology works to support and decompress your spine. And now it's covered by Medicare.
Every patient with back pain should be wearing this belt.
Nothing gave me instant relief except for the Dr. Ho belt.
Feel good while standing, walking, driving, doing housework, and while laying down. And now Dr. Ho's patented belt is available at our best price ever. It's even covered by Medicare. Order now and get the easy-to-use hand pump and back rehabilitation DVD free.
You know, similar belts can cost you almost $1,000, but my belts won't cost you $500, not $300, not even $200. I will give you my special TV price.
And remember, Dr. Ho's belt is covered by Medicare.
If you know a friend or family member that suffers with pain, get them my system today. Help them live with less pain, be more active, and get back to doing the things they love. Give them the gift of health.
Listen to this important message. If you owe money to the IRS, you will want to hear this. Penalties and interest compound daily on your back taxes, putting you under a mountain of debt. Tax 10,000 has years of experience connecting people with tax resolution specialists. Working through the IRS Fresh Start program, they will handle all the necessary forms, and if you qualify, you may end up saving thousands of dollars. Call Tax 10,000 at 800-773-4604.
Endless pools are an incredible alternative to traditional pools, making it easy and inexpensive.
That's BillyCBoxing.com. Consider this your warning. Now back to Talkin' Boxing with Billy C. He may not have an Excellence in Broadcasting award, but the night's still young. And he's got martinis. So you never know what may be by morning. It's Talkin' Boxing with Billy C. Talkin' Boxing with Billy C. Now back to Billy C. Interact BillyCBoxing.com.
And we're back. You're watching and listening to the Billy C Show. Glad you could be with us. And joining us right now, boxing's best photographer, Emily Harney, joins us. Good morning, Emily.
Good morning. How's it going?
Oh, it's going good. I got to tell you, we're having some trouble. So unfortunately, only I can see your beautiful face right now. The rest of the people can't, but we're working on that. We're going to get that corrected, so I apologize for that. But we can hear you loud and clear.
That's good, so I can take off all the makeup and what have you.
First and foremost, let's just get right into it. They made it officially official. Canelo-Kovalev in November in Vegas. Initially we were thinking, Canelo, body shots, going to take care of Kovalev, etc. What's your thoughts on this fight? I mean, it's a good week has gone by. I mean, do you have some early opinions on this fight? And the masses who think Canelo is going to walk through Kovalev, do you think that's what's going to happen?
I don't see that happening at all. I mean, Kovalev is just a naturally bigger fighter, and he commands that ring at that weight. And, Canelo's coming up, so it's going to be a different fight for him. And, for me, just watching, Canelo. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you fine.
Okay. All right. There was some sort of noise that came through my phone. Sorry about that. To see that fight, I just think Kovalev's in a much better position. What we see from Canelo along the way is at just a different level, and I think Kovalev should be able to command him a lot better. He's going to be able to maybe work the ring a little bit better than other people have. It's just a different test for him, and unless Kovalev is completely off of his game, which I don't ever think that's going to happen in this fight, I think Kovalev is the upper hand here. Now, is it a good fight at this point for Canelo? Of course it is, but there were a lot of other guys that, in the weight class that he was in were waiting to fight him. So I think it's frustrating for other fighters and those that wanted to see him fight the Andres and what have you, are going to have their opinion where they want to see him really get beat. I don't think he's going to get beat hard, but I just think it's going to be at that weight class. It's just a different fight.
Early on, everybody, including myself, says Canelo's going to work the body and it's going to, be a stoppage, etc. But now I'm starting to think, well, the big question here, I think, falls on Buddy McGirt. Can Buddy McGirt help Kovalev be disciplined enough to take advantage of his obvious height and reach? Because if he can establish the jab and stay far away from Canelo, or at least distance, and box him for full 12 rounds, I mean, that's going to be the challenge for Kovalev. Can he stay disciplined? Canelo can't get into work the body. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, that's the thing. I think Kovalev is just that much bigger, and he has the ability to do that. We've seen him do it, but we haven't seen him do it consistently. So, if he decides to mix it up and get in too close, he's going to run the risk of getting hit with those shots that we've seen Canelo land on others. But I just wonder at that weight level, how is that going to, give Canelo power? Can it? Will it? That's not something right now that, I'm predicting is going to be easy for him. I would think with Kovalev's, experience being hit with power of that weight class, it's just going to be different. Now, of course, Canelo can surprise us in that, and when he does get in there, land those body shots that are going to put a Kovalev down. But you got to wonder, as you move up, are you going to be able to pull that power with you? Now, again, I know Canelo, we've seen him be heavy, but naturally, in terms of Kovalev, he's a bigger fighter. So I just think the experience there with other bigger fighters are going to work in Kovalev's favor. But he does need to take advantage of that reach and height. Why not? But, you get excited, you get in there, you want to mix it up. So hopefully he can be smart enough for 12 rounds to stay off the inside and work off the jab.
I think you make a great point because we discussed this earlier. Canelo hasn't taken power with him as he's moved up. And this is quite the jump for him against a guy, we all say, oh, he doesn't like shots to the body. But let's be real. He's taking shots to the body from legitimate light heavyweights. Is Canelo going to make that impact? And it's going to be, it's a fight I like. I like the fight, so I'm looking forward to it.
I'm not against it, I was hoping to see Canelo fight some other guys in the mix because we had heard about the names being thrown around and what have you, at the lighter weights. But it is what it is. I mean, where do you go with Kovalev at this point? You might as well have a guy come up. You got to give Canelo some credit for coming up and fighting a guy like Kovalev. When he had opportunity to fight other guys that, I think he had a really great chance at, continuing to hold the belts at. But, this is a challenge. You got to respect a guy for taking on that challenge.
Big fight next week. Errol Spence going up against Shawn Porter. I love the fight. We will be doing a show as soon as the official announcement is made, so we'll all be up late next week. But Errol Spence Jr., in my opinion, Emily, he hasn't fought anybody like Shawn Porter. As a matter of fact, he didn't stop Mikey Garcia, which surprised me. I think he's in for a tough fight. What's your thoughts on the fight, and what's your prediction?
Yeah, this was a conversation I had over the weekend when I was at the Dutch Over fight. And, I think that this is a great fight. We wanted to see this. It's right time. It's perfect. There's nothing wrong with that at all. But it's a really tough fight for Spence based on, who he's fought. And then you look at who Porter's fought. The experience there that Porter's had and takes with him into this fight is something that really can solidify the position for him. And I think that's what Porter has to really work with. Spence is a smart fighter, and so this is what he needs to really catapult himself forward. I think you have a good fight in front of you regardless. So I think at this point you just see, well, who's hungrier? And they're both hungry because we know Porter's kind of, moving in a direction where he's got to make some decisions on, what happens with his career. And Spence is still young. But I anticipate a really great fight between these two. But Porter's experience can really help him in this fight more than anything.
So how do you see it going? You didn't, come on.
I would love to see Spence take this. I would like to see this put him in a position where everybody goes, okay, yep, this is what we were thinking this kid was made of, and, going in the right direction. So I do think Spence can do it. But if he gets into trouble and Porter, remembers where he needs to be when somebody gets into trouble, we have a position where Spence can be in some trouble. But I don't really see that going that way. I think Spence is a smarter fighter in terms of, where he wants to go right now. And so I'm not going early knockouts or anything like that. I hope that.
Emily, we're losing you. We're getting a real bad connection. So I still didn't get your prediction. Could you give me your exact prediction on the fight?
Spence decision.
Spence by decision. All right, finally. You got to run for politics, man. You got to get into politics because, you danced around that one like Fred Astaire. But in any event, we will be looking forward to you next week after the fight. And hopefully I'll have the cameras all set up and we'll get to see you as well because only I get to see you right now. But enjoy the day. Once again, the background is showing me that you're in a beautiful place right now. And enjoy the day, and we'll look forward to you next week.
Thank you. You as well. Have a good one.
All right, take care. That's Emily Harney, boxing's best photographer. You can check out her work everywhere because that's why she's the best. All right, final thoughts on Shawn Porter, Errol Spence. All right, so Errol Spence Jr. is ranked number 2 in the world at welterweight. He's the IBF World Welterweight Champion. He's currently 29 years old, only 2 years younger than his opponent next week, Shawn Porter. He is a southpaw, and he's 5'9.5" tall. He's a Long Island-born guy, which I can relate to, me too, but he's more well known for being a Texas resident, a diehard Dallas Cowboy fan. He busted onto the scene, obviously Olympian. He's 25-0, 21 knockouts. He's gone 108 rounds as a pro with an 84% knockout ratio. I look at his career from 2015 on. Chris Herndon, Alejandro Barrera, Chris Algieri, Leonard Bundu, Kell Brook, Lamont Peterson, Carlos Ocampo, and Mikey Garcia for those last 8 fights or so. He looked good in all those fights, but he's never once faced a aggressive fighter like Shawn Porter. Kell Brook, he did win. He stopped Kell Brook in the 11th round, broke Kell Brook's other orbital socket. I put an asterisk next to that, not taking anything away from Spence because I love the kid, but Kell Brook had also been in a war with Triple G at a much bigger weight where he broke the other socket. And I think Kell Brook, the mileage, because of the tough fights that he was in, and oh, by the way, he also fought a year earlier, Shawn Porter, when he took the title from Shawn Porter or won the title, or whatever the case was, that he beat Porter for the title. Lamont Peterson, he basically couldn't continue in that fight. Carlos Ocampo was not a competitive fight at all, with Errol Spence knocking him out in the first round. And in his last pro fight in March of this year, he fought Mikey Garcia. So this will be the second fight for 2019 for Errol Spence, which by today's standards is busy, I guess. I don't know. Mikey Garcia was undefeated going into that fight, 39-0. But he was also a hell of a lot smaller than Errol Spence. The surprising factor in that fight was the fact that Errol Spence did not stop Mikey Garcia. Mikey Garcia had been down on the canvas several times in his career, and I was expecting Spence to knock him out. I was kind of rooting for Garcia because I love Mikey Garcia. I just loved the way he fights, and he did catch Errol Spence in that fight. I just think that Errol Spence showed me that he did not have enough pro experience by basically beating Mikey Garcia and going the distance. Now he steps in with Shawn Porter, who's ranked number 4 in the world at welterweight. He's currently the WBC World Welterweight Champion, and like I said, he's only 2 years older at 31. He's given up an inch and a half in height, which he usually gives up the height to all of his fighters. He's also given up 3 inches in reach. His record is 30 wins, 17 coming by knockout, 2 losses, and 1 draw. But when you look at the resume of Shawn Porter, he has fought the better opposition. I mean, it's not even close. You go back to 2012, Julio Diaz, Phil LaGreco, Julio Diaz again, Devon Alexander when he was in his prime, Paulie Malignaggi, Kell Brook, he lost a majority decision against in 2014, Eric Bone, Adrian Broner when he was still a decent fighter, Keith Thurman when he was a great fighter, lost that fight. I thought that he should have gotten the nod. Andre Berto, even though Berto was not at his world championship level, was still a tough out, and he knocked him out. Adrian Granados, Danny Garcia in a fight where many thought Danny Garcia was the best fighter in that weight class as well. And in his last fight, Ugas. I think the problem with Shawn Porter in his last fight, winning a split decision, I think his choice of a game plan is what hurt him in that fight. He tried to show people that he was more than just a rough and tough, in-your-face, non-stop, punches being thrown, God knows where they're going to land type of an attack, which is what Shawn Porter does best. He wanted to show everyone, like Dax suggested earlier, that he can box like he did in the amateurs. And he was diligent in trying to show it. As a matter of fact, he stuck to his I can box game plan for 12 rounds. It almost cost him the fight. I'm assuming that he and his father are going to test Errol Spence and come into this fight against Errol Spence as the rough and tumble Shawn Porter that put him on the map. In my opinion, that's his only chance of winning against Errol Spence. I think Errol Spence clearly is the better boxer and will pick Shawn Porter apart if Shawn Porter tries to come in there and show that he can outbox a boxer. Remember, Errol Spence is a southpaw, and Shawn Porter is an orthodox fighter. So again, if he tries to come in and outbox Errol Spence, I think that will be in Errol Spence's favor. But at this point, I'm going to assume that Shawn Porter will not try to outbox Errol Spence. I think he will try to come in and bully him and test him. Therefore, I'm picking the upset in this fight. I think that Shawn Porter is going to beat Errol Spence. I think Errol Spence is going to be tested in this fight. I think there's going to be some cuts in this fight, something that Errol Spence hasn't had to deal with. And I think that because of his success in the amateurs, I think people have automatically his opponents have automatically stepped in the ring against Errol Spence with the utmost respect. I'm banking on the fact that Shawn Porter will not. I think that Shawn Porter is going to go in there with the game plan to challenge basically the calmness and normalcy of Errol Spence. And I think he's going to get him out of his game. I think that Shawn Porter has the power to hurt him. I also think that Errol Spence has the power to hurt Shawn Porter. There's no question about that. The odds are in Errol Spence's favor, but I think the tangible here for Shawn Porter is his rough and tumble style. I don't think Spence is going to like it, and I think that if Shawn Porter can work the body a little more consistently than he has in his last couple of fights, I think he wears Errol Spence down. I think he's going to win this fight, and I wouldn't be surprised if he wins by stoppage, even though that Errol Spence has a much higher knockout percentage. He's got an 84% knockout versus a 51.5%. But remember, Shawn Porter has over 100 rounds more of professional experience than Errol Spence, and considering that he really only has 8 more fights than Errol Spence, 100 rounds, 8 more fights, those are all championship caliber rounds if you do the math. So I'm picking the upset. I'm picking Shawn Porter. We will be doing a live broadcast next week, and it will be approximately 6 minutes after the official announcement is rendered. So make sure you return next time right after that fight, because we'll be doing it live. I'll have hopefully Sal will join us with his thoughts. We will have Dax and Alex and the beautiful Emily Harney. So make sure you tune in for that show. It was a pleasure being here. Sorry for some of the technical problems, like us losing power and the fact that we can't get the guest cameras working. But we're diligently working on that. So hopefully by the post-fight show for Errol Spence and Shawn Porter, we'll have it in effect. Hey, listen, until next time, I'll leave you with this. Ciao, baby.